Yeah, record on this computer. All right. Recording. All right. Oh my God. Third show. This is Nick from Sour Grapes, and this is Mike.
What's going on, everybody?
We are super psyched today to introduce our special guest for our Rosé show, which we thought would be apropos because that is what's going on in this world. Like, it's just rosé. That's all that's going on. And John is someone that I met in the Boston wine scene. I think, John, the last time I saw you was like in probably OPC, I think, in 2016.
Yeah, probably.
So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give John the mic right now. I sound like an 80s talk show host. And then let him introduce himself, and then we're just going to get right into rosé. So, John, welcome to Sour Grapes.
Great. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Like Nick said, my name's John Libonati. I am the former owner of Social Wines in Boston, and big, huge rosé fan. So much so that when we do our grand tastings there in Boston, I don't know if Nick, if you've ever been to any of them, we'd have 300 people attending those tastings. Fortunately, we had a courtyard out to the side of the shop, and we were able to set that up for pretty large tastings. And it was a lot of fun. I became a huge fan of rosé. And then I sold the shop in 2017 to move back to New York, and then moved from there to Palm Springs, where I'm planning to open another wine shop, natural wine shop like Social Wines was, but with a tasting lounge, because here the laws are completely different than what we had in Boston. You can do taste on premise here in California and actually pour pretty much a full glass of wine.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. Well, once all the dust settles, I mean, I was pretty close to signing a lease, but now I'm waiting to see what happens after our unfortunate pandemic, when we can get back to normal life again.
Yeah. So how has it been for you out there in California as far as the pandemic? I know you live in a fairly spacious area. How are people doing, and how's wine doing? What's going on?
I think people are coping well. I mean, in Palm Springs, it's pretty spread out, so people can get outside. Even though California is one of the first states to start the lockdown and the self-isolation, so I think that's kept us, for the most part, fairly healthy and under the curve. And here, since it is so spread out, people can get out, they can ride bikes. No one's within, if you're passing somebody, you're like 12, 20 feet apart. But it's like the rest of the country where, there's, any kind of disinfectant is missing off the shelves. It's hard to find stuff like that, paper towels, any type of paper products. But I think in the wine industry, since we can sell, wine shops can sell, or bars can also sell bottles of wine to go, and premixed cocktails, believe it or not, can be sold to go as well. So, restaurants and stuff are trying to do anything, even bars, I think, that have food are trying to do whatever they can to do curbside pickup, internet ordering, telephone ordering, and keeping social distancing. But we ordered from a Mexican restaurant 2 nights ago. It was our first time having takeout food. It was such a treat. But they actually had a back parking lot, so they had a table set up. The woman comes out with the order. She had a disinfectant wipe, wiped everything down for you, and then you went and picked it up, put it in your car, and of course then we would like hand sanitize and wipe everything down again by the time we got home. It's a totally different world right now, but we have to adapt and keep ourselves healthy.
Most definitely. I also wanted to say I've been really enjoying your your cocktail videos you've been doing.
Thanks. I'm a bit of a comedian, and I'm trying to, put a little brevity to keep things kind of light right now, because there's so much seriousness going on right now, politically, health-wise. It's, a big shout out to our healthcare workers. My God, what you guys are doing. I mean, something I don't think I could ever do. Cheers to you guys.
Yeah. Cheers. All right. Well, this is a rosé episode, so we're going to go into happy places right now with rosé, and not necessarily be all gloomy. We can be gloomy later again if we want. Put on the cure or something, you know.
That's when we get to the bottom of the bottle.
Put on the Morrissey record. No. So yeah, the Rosé episode is here today, and John, if you want to bring on what you got.
Sure. I am bringing on Donkey and Goats, 2019 Rosé, Grenache Gris is this, from Mendocino County, Gibson Ranch. And you can see here that it's pretty dark. They don't do any fining or filtering. It's my first time with this style from them. I actually spoke to Tracy Brandt from Donkey and Goat yesterday to find out a little bit more about the wine and their process. It is a natural wine. They don't use, they use very minimal sulfites at bottling, if any. There's no fining, no filtration. And she was saying that they had a pretty good harvest for 2019 from the Gibson Ranch, which is kind of an old ranch. Some of the vines there are over 100 years old. She was telling me that one of her children, teenagers, stands about 5'11", and still can't reach the top of the vine, some of the vines that are in this vineyard. So it's pretty crazy to be getting such incredibly old fruit, similar to like you would see in Barossa, like those huge trunks. I can show a quick screen share as well of the vineyard, or one of the wineries, vineyards there, I'm sorry. This is not, I think this might be Gibson Ranch, but it's not the actual, like the super tall vineyards, but you can look at the size of these trunks. I mean, it's rare that you see this in the US, and, you know, for California, when you had times in history when people were tearing up vineyards to plant the most popular grape at the time, this tiny little pocket kept, you know, their original vines. Here's also a quick map of where it's located. You can see Sonoma County right down here. So just up the 101, this tiny little plot of land is the McDowell Valley. And inside there is where the Gibson Ranch is. And to the left, as you get further out, you get closer to the water. But this is this tiny little valley that has a really cool microclimate. And grows some pretty great fruit, lots of Zinfandel, lots of Grenache. There's tons of things that they grow there. And talking to Tracy yesterday, it was interesting because she said with this vineyard, they have these, what did she call them? The Taranso, they're stainless steel Taranso tanks. And there's several ways you can basically get the wine, like spigots or pipes that pull the wine out of these tanks. And they decided this year to just go from the bottom, and you know, have all that must in there, and it's kept in the wine. I'm not sure if you could see it as well in the video, but there is a lot of sediment to this wine, which to me doesn't bother me. Being a natural wine fan, it's kind of like getting some food with your wine. But yeah, and I was expecting a really heavy, chewier style of rosé. If you could blind taste someone on this, this is just beautiful. It smells like a Provence rosé. It is very light, bright, super fresh and alive. And for me, one of my favorite things about rosé is it's kind of hard to explain, but if you've had it, if you've had freeze-dried fruits, that is something that I constantly perceive in rosé, is this crunchy freeze-dried fruit. Not so much the sugar, but like that fruit, intense fruit flavor. And this just has it in spades. There's this crazy kind of dried raspberry, strawberry top, like a little bit of green stem in the strawberry. And it's just one of the toughest things I think in natural wines is getting balance correct, where you have your acid, your tannin, everything just completely balanced, all your fruit. This wine has it. It's just super pretty. And for, I think as a retailer, it's a tough sell, I would say, to your traditional consumer. And at Social Wines, I would always have no problem just opening a bottle. I'd say, yeah, let's just open something here, try this, and I'm telling you, you're going to love this. And that's an easier sell. But to sell it just on this color, you kind of have to know natural wines and trust the winemaker and your shop. That's the other thing about being a small, you know, family-owned wine shop, is you build relationships. I don't know many people that build relationships with Total Wine or Bevmo. You know, they just go in and pick from a case stack or a point score. So I'm always telling friends, just find your small shop, try to make a relationship, let them know what you like, what you don't like. Even if you can't explain it, just give them something to work on. And so for me, I would say this was an easy sell for me because I can grandstand and cheerlead about my favorite wines all day long to the point where consumers are like, can we get out of the store now? So yeah, and I've always been a big fan of Donkey and Goat and what they do. And Jared, Tracy's husband, they work the winery together. One of my favorite quotes when he told me that he was organic and switching to biodynamic is he mentioned that his kids play in these vineyards. Why would he spray poison on these vines when he could also be poisoning his children? And I said, it's a good point, and it's also something, to consider for the rest of the world, which is part of my passion about natural wines. So yeah, that is the Donkey and Goat Rosé, and it's super dry for anybody who's concerned. I think you do get, since there is a little bit of that unfiltered must left in there, there is a slight bit of tannin on the finish, which is also nice because a lot of time when you drink rosé, you get all this light, bright fruit, hardly any tannin. So that kind of keeps you in mind, remembering like, yeah, I am drinking wine, because rosé is so easy and so quaffable that it's, as we used to say in Boston, it was a patio pounder.
Absolutely.
So this, I don't know if I would want to pound on the patio. This is more like a sip and savor. I would say some food or some soft cheese would just be outstanding with this wine.
Beautiful. The color is just absolutely stunning. What
Yeah.
what is the grape profile for it? I know you mentioned from the area, it's a lot of probably Grenache and Zin.
Yeah. Oh, from that area, what are the grapes?
Well, what's the grape in the rosé you have in particular?
I would say for Grenache Gris, it's more in like a stone fruit and strawberry flavor profile, lower acid as well.
Nice.
And yeah, it's incredibly balanced. I was really surprised. I was not, even as a natural wine fan, I had some doubts just looking at the color, and I'm so glad I just opened this up about a half an hour ago, and it was perfect right out of the bottle. No
Awesome.
time to wait.
Uh, you are a natural wine guy. A lot of people don't really know or understand natural wines all too much.
Yeah,
Could you just, really quick, Reader's Digest version of what makes a
sure.
wine a natural wine versus the normal winemaking process?
At the bare minimum, the grapes have to be organic. Uh, Above that, it's basically no manipulation in the winery. It's crushed fermented grapes, let Mother Nature do her thing, no inoculating, no adding a yeast to create a flavor profile, no acidifying or deacidifying, no adding sugar to up the alcohol content. It's wine in its natural state as it was thousands of years ago. And just some producers use bare minimum of sulfites at bottling as a preservative. It's not used picking the grapes and being tossed in a truck where they will sulfite because they're trying to pick as much as they can and the grapes don't ferment out in the field. So they don't do that. All of this stuff is mostly hand harvested, which is again part of the price point when you pay a little bit more for a natural wine. But yeah, there's no manipulation. And one of the things Jared is pushing for is to get labeling ingredient lists on their wine. And they have one on the back of their wine, and it's just grapes and sulfites.
There you go.
And that's all it is. But so many producers can add over 200 chemicals, and the consumer doesn't know that. Most people consider wine a natural product on its own, no matter what bottle they're picking up. But most of their wines that they're drinking are basically created, lab created sometimes, or, some producers will just buy tanks and tanks full of wine that are for sale, bulk wine, create a dummy label, put it out there, and people don't even know what's in that wine. And even the person that's producing it doesn't know what's in that wine.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, there's a palate for everybody. And I mean, I didn't start out with natural wines. I started out, I think my first drinking experience with wine was in my late teens, and I had a Sutter Home White Zinfandel loaded with sugar. So of course I'm going to love that being in my teens. Yeah, I'll chug that. And then after a while, I'm like, wow, this is like candy. I can't drink this anymore. And then when I became of drinking age, I started drinking a little bit better, but not too much better. I think Zinfandel was just starting to hit from Lodi, and I was just going crazy over that because it was big, it was alcoholic, it was chewy. And then I opened a bar in New York City. I went to culinary school, realized there's really no money in food. I did not want to spend 24 hours a day at a restaurant. So I said, I'm going to open a bar. My passion, I've bartended for years. My passion had always been in spirits and alcohol. One day I just had a Pinot that just blew me away. And I thought, wow, I'm going to really start looking into this wine thing. And I found the WSET program, started that. And then I met Isabelle Legeron, who does Raw Fare at a New Year's Eve party in London. She's really good friends with my best friends. And she was telling me all about natural wine. I'm like, what have I been missing? What are you talking about? And so when I got back home, I started looking into it more and more and just thought, wow, this is it. I mean, I eat organically as possible. I try to, do everything I can, recycle, save the planet, all I can. And I thought, well, why aren't I doing this with my wine too, which is what I do. And that's pretty much how I got into natural wine. And I've never left. I mean, I'll enjoy a bottle of not so much commercial wine, as long as I know it's a small producer and it's somebody that I know is at least organic or knows, yeah, I'm taking care of the environment. I'm not just, polluting as much as I can. I mean, even Donkey and Goat, they reuse their must. They have a pickup, a recycling pickup, and it goes to farms. It gets used at schools, and it goes to, other distillers. So it's not something that they're just dumping and getting rid of. So there's this whole circle of life too, which is all part of the natural wine process in the vineyards. There's a huge circle of life from the soil to the fruit to the actual wine.
That's a good point you bring up, because I had spoke with Jared last time he was out in Boston, and I was asked, we were talking about what natural wine is to him, and he's like, well, I don't consider myself a natural winemaker, and certainly there are wines that aren't considered, and again, this is from a marketing perspective, either by wine shops or wine reps or companies that aren't in the natural category, but still have minimal intervention in the vineyard. Just again, your opinion, because we're all in the trade here.
Yeah.
Do you find that there are some wineries that are quote unquote natural that don't get enough attention, or do you also find that there are some wineries that aren't and are marketed that way? Do you think that there's a certain sort of crisscross of information that's not getting out properly?
There is and there isn't. Natural wine producers are so small. I mean, they don't produce a lot of wine because they don't own hundreds and hundreds of acres of vineyards. They own smaller vineyards, especially in Europe. I mean, here it's a little bit easier to own bigger vineyards because there's more land. But I'd say one of the biggest things that's happening right now is a lot of producers are growing organically and getting certified, which is ridiculously expensive. So you don't see a lot of natural winemakers certified. But when they do, it kind of stops there. I think they're trying to get on the bandwagon now of, organic is hot right now. Let's, start looking into this. And it always used to make me laugh when I would walk into Whole Foods, and Whole Foods was originally all about organic and local and farmer fresh. And then they started carrying wine. And I looked at their selection and I'm thinking, if anybody's going to do natural wines, why isn't it Whole Foods? But it's hard to do on such a large scale since production is so small. Yeah, I see organic coming out and being, profiled on the label more and more now. And
yeah, I was going to say that's the one thing I really want to bring up to whoever's watching that doesn't really know too much about natural wines. Like, you can be labeled organic, and then you can do so much manipulation when it comes to the winemaking process. It's ridiculous. You hear words like mega purple that are thrown around that just makes everything taste big, round, lush. These natural wine producers are literally just letting the grapes do their thing, both in the vineyards and in the winemaking process. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, and it's also a tough sell too. You can't just walk into a natural wine shop and just pick up wine and think automatically you're going to love that wine. You really need to talk to some people. It's kind of like I described single malt scotch. You just don't jump into a big peaty scotch. When you have a friend who's a big scotch fan, they're like, yeah, you're going to love this because I love these peaty scotches. And you're a novice and they hand that to you. You take one sip and smell. You're like, I am never going to drink scotch again, because you think that's what scotch tastes and smell like. No, you start out with, a Highland, something that's more caramel and, malty and just easier to palate, and then slowly work your way up. It's a lot, natural wines are a lot like that. Anybody that's a fan of kombucha would probably love natural wines and just be able to walk right into a shop and just grab anything. But there's certain producers that, make wines that you would never even know that they were a natural wine, because not that they taste commercial, but they just taste fresh, alive, and just easy to drink.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I think so.
It reminds me of like, going up to a Frank Zappa fan, self-professed, and be like, no, let me play you this Frank Zappa album. Oh wait, you don't like it? Let me play these 60 others. Oh wait, I really should actually start you on like the best of, and then you can get into it.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of wild stuff, but yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. Let's see. Do you want to add anything else to Donkey and Goat before we briefly just go into other rosés here?
If anybody's out there looking for them, just ask your local retailer. Check out their Chardonnays. Their Chardonnays are actually, I think all their wines are outstanding. I was actually going to open a pet nat too, but I didn't want to get too boozed up for my, first time here.
We can do a pet nat show next time. Nothing but
yeah. I also love pet nat.
For anyone watching, PetNat is the sort of the really old school way of putting bubbles into a bottle. You pretty much just put the juice under pressure, under a crown cap, and the resultant CO2 from the fermentation causes the bubbles to form. They're generally unfiltered because they haven't been screwed with, and they're really fun and meant to be drunk super fresh and lively. Donkey and Goat's Pet Nat is pretty killer. I remember what the grape is they used on that. Was it Pinot Gris too they do?
I thought it was Grenache, but it might be the Pinot Gris. I should have kept the bottle with me here. But yeah, they're fun wines to drink. I mean, they're great, like get together party wines, and just, with a small group of friends that you want to have bubbles, but you don't want to spend, $50, $60 on a bottle of champagne. You can have bubbles, and they're easy to open since it's a bottle cap. Anybody can do that.
Sweet. All right. I'm going to go real quick on my wine right here. Speaking of, we were talking about Mendocino and Lodi. This is the rotation wine right here. And I just split the screens. I'm freaking myself out. So rotation, I think you can put into your regular rotation of wines at home.
We're at the end already.
You knew there had to be a wine pun before the show ended. But rotation means rotation of the seasons for this label. It actually used to be a red center and a black outer. It used to be like a vinyl record that was supposed to rotate, but they changed it to this. Let me show you the people at home where you are in relation to Lodi here. So there we go. So you're here in Palm Springs, and then what we were talking about where your wine was too was, hey Google Maps, was over here in Mendocino in this little area somewhere.
Just to the left of Lakeport.
Nailed it.
Yeah, right there. That OHV recreation. It's right in the middle of all of that there.
Okay, so that's Mendocino goodness, and then I don't know where I'm going. Sacramento, and then south of Sacramento, you've got Lodi. Lodi is a fairly old region. Here's a better map right here. I will say that Lodi, this particular wine, I'm not really sure where the grapes come from, but I will tell you that it's 85% Chenin Blanc and 15% Petite Syrah, which is kind of fun. It's like a old school blush where they blend white and red juice together, and that used to be a common thing, and still do. I put on box wines and jug wines. They call it. You've seen the Colorossi blush jug wine, so it's classic in that regards.
Have the jug over your shoulder to take the sip.
Yes. That was my dad as a kid.
Exactly, and the drug wines are, you know, really good for wine pong if you're just beginning in the beer pong world but don't want to do, you know, that kind of thing. This is a very fun, fresh, easygoing kind of wine. The Chenin Blanc really rounds out the palate on here. And for those watching, Chenin Blanc is a grape variety that originated in the Loire Valley of France, used in famous areas like Vouvray and Semur-Champagny. Any chance to do a French accent? Chenin Blanc was also brought to California in the Clarksburg, Napa, Lodi areas, and it's also used for a lot of bulk wine production. And this particular family that runs this farm going back 100 years planted Chenin Blanc, and they like to throw in that really hearty Petit Syrah with intense tannins to give it a little bit of color and body. And that's what the rotation is all about. You can find this in your local grocer. Actually, I don't know where you can find this. When it comes down to it, it's a they have a decently large production, but not mega like your Kendall Jacksons or your J-Lors and things of that nature. But you know, if you're a fan of soap operas like As the World Turns, try rotation. Oh, that was bad. I'll see you guys later.
Heck yeah, Nick. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see the two of you and the styles of rosés that you're bringing out, because between the three of us, I think we're really hitting all of the ways to make rosé too. I mean, with you, Nick, you have that really old school way of taking a white wine and red wine, making a blush. You know, with you, John, kind of really just keeping it natural with that Grenache Gris and just kind of letting it do its thing. I have kind of a bit of both. This is the Pasqua 11-minute from Trevenese, which is kind of a new IGT. They split it off to be able to make it a DOC for some of the white wines, and they wanted to still let you make other wines out of that region. So I'll just kind of share the screen on that one to show you what's up. So the region itself is, it takes Trento Alto Adige, Veneto, and Friuli Venezia Giulia and kind of really bulks them all together. So a lot of the white wines are DOC from that region just because of the elevation, the height, and everything else. But the rosés and other red wines that are coming from that region are also amazing, as we talked about last show with Costanza, because she's from this same general region and doing a lot of wines from this area as well. This is, by all means, a bit of a bastard wine. It's got some primarily Corvina, which is fun. You don't really see rosés made from that. They blend in some white, so they blend in some Trebbiano, and then they do some Syrah and some Carmenere. So this is all basically, you know, if you're a winery and you're making rosés, this is really kind of what you call free run juice, or, you know, stuff that you're just bleeding out of your tanks to concentrate when you're making that wine. What some people do when you're crushing the grapes, they'll bleed off just a little bit of the juice beforehand to really let the juice kind of sit and macerate with the skins to make that really red wine. But you're going to have a little bit of that skin contact, and that's really how this wine is made. It's just kind of the bleed off of, you know, some of the other wines that they're making, and it just makes it really, really fun, really light. It just makes a really great wine. And these guys are tongue-in-cheek, to say the least. Like one of their wines, they've literally labeled, "Hey Frenchies, you could have made this wine," just because it's all kind of French varietals. It's made from Italy in that same sort of region. So for me, you know, rosé is all about, you know, just enjoying the weather, enjoying the people you're around, and, you know, like John said, it's a bit of a porch pounder.
Porch pounder, yeah.
Let's unshare that screen somehow.
That is a good thing too about people understanding rosés, is that there's still a little bit of a prejudice about when people see pink wines or they see a color, yeah. And even rosé fans that see a light pink color, like the rosés that a lot you see kind of everywhere. They're like, oh, it's light, it must be dry, but if it's dark, it must be sweet. And because of that, you mentioned earlier, John, the Sutter Home White Zinfandel, is that when I think people have seen that so many times. They still
Mhm.
equate a dark pink with sweet, and it's like being in any kind of business, where it's a restaurant or a retail shop, and getting people to actually taste it or say, "No, trust me,
Sure.
this is not a sweet wine." I think
Well,
it's
yeah, as a retailer, it was tough because you can't mention fruit to a lot of people because their first inclination is sweet. And y- wine is all about fruit flavors, but it's not necessarily sweet. So people, the general consumer thinks, oh, you can't tell them about strawberry or this wine has like this dark cherry quality to it because they think sweet, but you have to reinforce that it's not sweet. It's the flavor profile. That's why I always try to go to like something crunchy because also crunch is also associated a lot of times with dry. So
Yeah.
if you mention freeze dried fruits, it has this crunch connotation in your head. You have dry in the name. People kind of get it more that way. But as soon as you mention fruit, like, oh, it's got this great ripe plum quality, like, oh, I don't want sweet. Nobody wants sweet. I'm not trying to sell you sweet unless you're looking for something sweet. Let's get a Sauterne or a port going, then we'll talk. But yeah, it's a hard sell with fruit when you describe flavors to a lot of people.
And I think another cool thing to mention too is with rosés getting more and more popular. Though we're seeing them, um, year round in some cases,
Yeah.
with even major distributors and wholesalers having pre-sell rosé trade tastings, which is good because I remember 10, 15 years ago, you'd have maybe 5 or 7 rosés for your section, and then when the cold weather would hit, people were like, "Oh, I'm done with the rosé." But people will still chug Chardonnay all winter long. So it's interesting that at least it's getting more into the lexicon of
Mhm.
what people are willing to drink, which is a good thing,
Yeah, at Social, we had at one point over 100 different rosés,
Wow.
and it was a lot. And Eileen Elliott, who was my wine director, she and I would sit with a spreadsheet and we would color code all the rosé by color
Nice.
in a spreadsheet. And then we'd put it up on the TV screen and look at it and adjust it. And that's how we would set up our rosé collection. And we tried to do it by color within the grape itself. And it was a lot of fun to do. And most of the time, people would focus only on the light colored rosé. And you'd have to move them over to gently to a Bandol or a Tavel and explain to them that, no, these are definitely dry. And if I would have put it in a black glass that you couldn't see through, you would swear that you were drinking, a really light, bright rosé, which you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something we didn't touch on were foods too. I mean, some of the rosé, because for me personally, I love rosé all year long. And now that I live in a warmer climate, I mean, even when I lived in Boston, I would have rosé in the middle of winter. One of my favorite things is to have it with Thanksgiving dinner.
Yep.
I think it's a perfect pairing for Thanksgiving dinner because there's so many different dishes. There's so many different palates sitting around that table. You can't please everybody. With rosé, it's such an easy go-to that you can say, here's even if something dark like this or something darker like a Tavel or a Bandol or light, bright, and super acidic from Provence cuts through all that fat in a Thanksgiving dinner. I think it's fantastic. What do you guys
Well,
think
I think you can say it's an easy donkey and go to.
Oh, there you go.
Master of puns.
Wow. We're going to get a Webby for this episode.
Razzie? Yeah.
I will say that just going to Thanksgiving in general, I have a family that is not into wine, so I share whatever I want to bring. A favorite wine I used to bring to them was actually Kotori Zinfandel. Speaking of natural winemakers, and
Yeah.
10 years ago, I think I had the lion's share, and I'm going to get really geeky now, is a 2005 Sonoma Mountain Estate Zin that Tony made. It was just amazing. And I introduced that wine to my family that have no wine palate and loved it. But going back to rosé, I would bring that too. I'd bring a sparkling rosé Lambrusco. I'd bring
Awesome.
all the pink shades that I could put on that table. And because of the dishes, dishes be crazy, but because of the wide dishes, I can't do this anymore.
Dishes be crazy. Nick, you're driving me to drink.
Out the bottle, nonetheless.
Yeah, that's, I guess.
That should be on a t-shirt. Dishes be crazy. And every chef has to wear that t-shirt.
Absolutely.
Let's spread that hashtag after I post this
Yeah.
up today.
Awesome.
What about you, Mike?
I mean, like rosé is. I put rosé in the same camp as I put champagne and in a lot of ways Riesling. There's a rosé for every single occasion, same way that champagne and Riesling, depending on what you like, and it just kind of goes with everything. I mean,
Yeah.
having some ribs that I smoked, uh, you know,
Oh,
over the weekend, and for me,
nice.
rosé and barbecue, it's just this perfect blend, because you have that spiciness, that heat, but you want something that's really, matches some of the sweetness of barbecue, but all that spice. Rosé does it. Again, in the summer, it's easy to drink on its own because you have that light,
Yep.
bright acidity with that fruit flavor. And, like you said, John, it's not that the fruit flavor is sweet. It's that fruit flavor with that nice dry tartness and acidity that just makes it delicious.
Absolutely.
And I mean, with cheeses too, like some people will say red, some people will say white. Go with rosé, and you're never going to go wrong because the rosé is going to go with the dried fruits that you're pairing with, that cheese or that charcuterie, and it's going to go with the cheeses and the meats. It's a winner.
Yeah, because you have those high acids in rosé and some of the high acid cheeses. Then you have the fat in meats cuts through the meat. I mean, it's a great all around wine, and it's interesting to see how it's exploded in the market. I mean, New York City did a rosé mansion, and I refuse to go to it because I think that's just taking it too far. But I mean, rosé also pairs incredibly well with the pool and the beach.
Yes, sir.
Sure. So, as we get to the end of our show, not that we have a time limit or anything, but John, if you weren't doing wine, like if you didn't never got into wine, what is another passion that lights you up that you would do or still do?
It's probably something that I still do, and it's gymnastics. I started when I was 7 years old, and I coached for a little while, and then left. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm originally from New York City, and went to New Jersey when I was 7 or 6, and
Jersey.
then
Sorry.
Jersey Shore. Spent a lot of money getting rid of my accent, and yeah, so I would probably go back, and I've even thought about doing it here because there's a couple of gymnastics gyms here. They don't do any adult programs, but I thought about teaching a few classes. So yeah, I think it would be going back to gymnastics and doing this. It's always been my passion.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, I'm seeing you do a lot of fantastic flips and handstands and other various things that I will never attempt to try.
And he can do them with a wine glass too, like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not Cirque du Soleil yet, but maybe one day I'll be able to like do a handstand one arm and be able to like get the wine glass.
That's a trick right there. Let's see.
How about you, Nick?
Me? Oh,
Yeah.
shit. Well, I probably, if I could be, I always tell people that if I could be, and paid for this, if I can be a drummer in a Motown cover band, then that's what I would do hands down. I mean, throw in some Stax records and shit like that, but like,
Awesome.
just get paid to be a drummer and play shows, and that would be my sort of thing.
That's cool. That is really cool. And for you, Mike?
Man, I've been all over the place in my life. Got in a past life, I was doing neuroscience research, believe it or not. Yeah, I was a nerd, hardcore, still am. I'm just nerdy about wine now.
Yeah.
I'd probably be back in the sciences, probably pharmacology. Again, it's nothing as cool as the two of you, but the other thing is theater. I was always a massive theater geek, so I could definitely probably be out there in the cast of Hamilton or something like that.
We should all write a wine song or something. Get a theme song going for this show.
Absolutely.
Possible. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on to the Sour Grapes show. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Anytime, guys. It's nice to see you again, Nick, and Mike. Nice to meet you. I'm glad both of you are healthy and staying safe right now.
Most definitely. What are you thinking? Pet nat next time, or go another round of natural wines?
I think we could probably combine both because I think most pet nats are pretty much on the natural side.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, wait till you taste the yellowtail pet nat.
Oh, I can't. I'm in quarantine. Darn. I can't right now.
I don't think I make one. No.
Great. We just lost our sponsors, or your sponsors.
Well, anyway, cheers to you, John. Cheers
to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Everybody doing their thing. Cheers.
Cheers.
That was good. I got to work on my toast. All right. See y'all next time.
Bye, guys. Thanks again.
Sour grapes shows and whatnot. Ciao.
Ciao.
All right.